Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today, I'm very sorry, but we are talking legendary items. And I mean talking as well, because as you can see, this is a bit of a strange video for us. There's no Evitel here. This isn't one of our super quick, edited, hilarious videos with Bill Cosby jokes all over the place. There might well be Bill Cosby jokes. I'm not saying there won't be. In fact, I'm not guaranteeing that at all. This is just me talking over this footage which I haven't actually chosen yet. I'm going to put that in afterwards, so who knows what it could be. Oh, I'm so excited. It'll probably be me downing a mythic boss and topping all the healing meters, I'd have thought. Yeah, something like that. And we do have proper videos like that coming out soon. We have our 7.1.5 guide, of course, and then all the December fun with end of the year videos, etc. So something to look forward to there. But I wanted to get this one out in the meantime. And I don't expect many people to watch this video. It's quite small scale. If we get 10 views, I'd be quite happy. But it's a subject that I felt I needed to tackle because it has been the main source of conversation in the Warcraft community for the last couple of weeks now, all coming to a head when Blizzard released their blue post on the subject yesterday, as I make this video. And I know that I am late to the legendary discussion party as well. Preach did a video on this last week. Belluar did one just a couple of days ago. So it's a bit like The Wire or Puberty. Everyone else did this ages ago. I'm just getting to it now. But get to it, I have. And we're going to talk about it now. And why I think the community has got legendary items all wrong. There are bad things about them, but I think there are good things about them as well. We're going to hopefully have a kind of a balanced discussion about this. Lots of things to cover, and I didn't want to make this video. And I still kind of don't really want to make this video, because I know how much shit videos like this are liable to get. But I'm going to kind of rely on the fact that actually not many people are going to watch this, so I might get away with it. So, join us, God, as we talk about legendary items in World of Warcraft Legion. Okay? Yeah. Go, 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 go. Okay, so legendary items have become, along with artifact power and artifact knowledge, the bogeyman of Legion, of this expansion. It has become Legion's flying or garrisons. It is the thing, the go-to thing that people are getting upset about in this expansion. An expansion which, I think it's fair to say, certainly from my point of view, is the best Warcraft expansion since Wrath, at least. I am having so much fun in Legion and have had already for so much longer than I've had in other expansions so far. I'm still playing the hell out of it every single day, still loving it, raiding with my guild, hanging out with friends online. Great times to be had. But there have been those resentments simmering under the surface of Legion for, well, since the very beginning, really, bubbling away. And as the honeymoon period for Legion has come and gone, those resentments have started to bubble just a little bit more. And those bubbles have got bigger until eventually, in the last couple of weeks, for artifact knowledge as well as legendaries, those bubbles have turned into big old shit bubbles, and the shit bubbles have exploded all over the faces of the community. We're upset. The community is upset. That is official. You go to the forums, you look at YouTube, like I say, this shit is everywhere. The devs are totally on the defensive when it comes to it as well. Never a good sign. And that is genuinely one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to make this video, and why I didn't want to make this video in the first place, is because what I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, I know is going to invite a whole ton of shit coming my way. Because I know how the community feels about this, and I'm about to say something which may leave you aghast. But ladies and gentlemen, I like legendary items. I think they work. And furthermore, I would go as far to say as a lot of the problems that people have with legendary items are as much a case of the community misunderstanding what they are for and their purpose within the game as problems with the legendaries themselves. And that's not to say there aren't problems with legendaries, we'll talk about that as well. But I know that right now you can't hear anything I'm saying, because I know that right now all you can hear is the click-clack of your own keys as you type hate into the comments or you unsubscribe from this channel. Because essentially what I've done is I've just told you that if you don't like legendary items, or you have a major problem with legendary items, and many people do, and they are very intelligent concerns that people have about these things, I've essentially just told you that you don't understand the game. That's what you think, but I haven't. I'm just saying there's a misunderstanding in general over the role of legendary items. Maybe some of that misunderstanding comes from Blizzard as well. Who knows? Anyway, hear me out, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why I like legendary items, and then we're going to address those concerns. So hear my side first of all before we do anything else. I like legendary items because I think they make the game more exciting. And I think, more importantly, they create a discourse and a conversation and a shared experience that players of World of Warcraft, no matter what they're doing within the game, share together. And I think that is one of the most important things in World of Warcraft. Let me explain all that a little bit more. So, how do they make the game more exciting? Well, that's obvious. I know that every time I open a loot box, or I complete my emissary quests, or I down a boss, or complete a dungeon, there is a chance, just a tiny little chance, that I will have found a legendary item. I know I'm going to get all that other loot as well. I know that when I complete my emissary quests, I'm going to get some piece of shit gear that I can't really use unless I'm incredibly lucky. And I'm going to get my Blood of Sargeras, and I'm going to get my Artifact Power. And that's great. That's a fair reward for completing 4 world quests. But there is also a chance that I might get rewarded completely unfairly and disproportionately. And I might get one of those orange items. There's always this excitement around whether a legendary item will drop. And you remember when those legendary items do drop. I remember my first legendary item. How do I remember it? Because it's my only legendary item. And I can tell you the name of it as well. It's Sefu's fucking secret, okay? This is another thing that I want to make incredibly clear. I am mounting what, despite, for want of a better word, amounts to a kind of a defense of the legendary system here. I am willing to discuss it robustly a little bit later on, but this bit is a defense. And I want you to know that I am coming to this defense from the position of a man that has been fucked by the legendary system. I am not one of the legendary system winners, okay? I'm not one of those guys that got a legendary in the first day of Legion and then got another one the next day because they fucked up the system so much and hadn't fixed the bugs yet. I am not a man who's sitting there with 4 of my BIS legendary items. No, I have got a fuck ton of slash time played at max level in this game, as you might imagine, since I run a World of Warcraft YouTube channel. And I have 1 fucking legendary to show for it on my Discipline Priest main, and it is Sefu's fucking secret. And you know what? I know that Sefu's secret can be okay for some classes, not for Discipline Priest. We can't even make it proc without just fucking up an entire dungeon. We can't use it in raids at all. It's a terrible, terrible piece of gear for us. I don't wear it. It's awful. So I am not one of life's winners. Sefu's secret is like, if it's the joke legendary, isn't it? It's like the meme legendary. If legendaries were James Bond actors, then Sefu's secret is George fucking Lazenby. Okay, no, it's not even that. It's fucking Johnny English, all right? It's not even a fucking James Bond actor. It's some weird shit-ass parody of James Bond. It's a joke version of James Bond. That's what Sefu's secret is in the world of legendaries. And yet, I'm defending legendaries here, despite being bottom of the fucking barrel, because even though my legendary is shit, it achieved what legendaries were supposed to do. It gave me an item which I was waiting for, and which I was anticipating, and which, even when it was Sefu's secret, I was excited when I got, because that moment when a legendary item drops is exciting for everyone. You can't help it. Of course it is. And then I realised which legendary it was, and I was really pissed off. And I went to the forums, and I went on my Twitter, and I put, look at this, look at my terrible luck. I'm the least lucky person in the world. Look at my Sefu's secret. This is an awful thing. And people joined in, because they knew. They went, oh shit, man, is that your only legendary? You've got a terrible legendary. This is bad news. This is terrible. And you know what? That was fun. That was really good fun, because I had a piece of loot that people understood. It didn't matter what class they played. It didn't matter what their secondary stats were. They understood the legendaries. They all were aiming for legendaries of their own. Many of them had legendaries. They could also all tell me where their legendaries had dropped from and what their legendaries were called. I can't tell you any other piece of loot, any other piece of gear that my Discipline Priest wears, apart from her artifact weapon. I couldn't name you the actual name of any of those pieces of loot. I can tell you I've got Sefu's secret. I can't tell you where any of those pieces of loot dropped from, which bosses they dropped from, or which world quests they dropped from. But I can tell you exactly where and when I got Sephuz' secret. And that's something that has been lacking from the game, I think, in recent years. That kind of moment of occasion when a certain piece of loot drops. Now, we're never going to get that from tier sets and things like that ever again. The community has just changed in a way that can't be the case. And the legendary items are, in my opinion, quite an ingenious way that Blizzard has thought of to bring that back. And in that respect, it has worked. We talk about legendaries. We know about legendaries. Legendaries is something we all have in common. Even when legendaries are terrible, we can join in that conversation. It has created a shared dialogue and a shared experience that every player in World of Warcraft, from your high-end Mythic Raiders to your casual Mount Collectors, share in common. Even if that thing that you share is to go, I have no legendary. People know what you're talking about. And it creates a better sense of community. I think it really does. And that is my defense of legendary items. That is why I like them. And that is the job and the role that they have fulfilled in the game, which I think they fulfill fantastically. And I say that as someone that has a shit legendary item and that thought legendaries were going to be a terrible idea when I first heard about them. Okay, so this is me saying I was wrong. I was totally wrong. A lot of the concerns that we all had were valid concerns, and as we're going to see any second now, a lot of them have actually been the case and have come to fruition. But I'm going to look at these concerns and I'm going to make another argument to you that a lot of these concerns are the wrong concerns that we have about legendaries. So let's take a look at the most anecdotal and common and sort of low-scale complaint that people have with legendaries, and that's their RNG nature and how skewed that can often appear to be. Now, this is such an easy one to tackle. I'm not going to spend very long on it. Obviously, if you play the game a shit ton and you haven't got your legendary, or you've only got one legendary, and all the people around you are picking up legendaries left, right, and centre, it feels unfair. And that's going to just generally piss you off. Whether or not you're justified in being pissed off, because it is, after all, only random numbers, doesn't really matter. If you're annoyed and pissed off throughout the game that you're not getting your legendary, that is a valid concern that Blizzard should be having about their player base. I was talking earlier about the excitement of opening an emissary quest sort of chest and hoping to get that legendary. Of course, the vast majority of the time, there is no legendary in there. That's not where I got my legendary from. I've never had a legendary from an emissary quest. And actually, what that introduces is another layer of disappointment into opening a chest. No matter how small that disappointment is, the anticipation that you have before it could be argued, is then offset by the fact that there is no legendary drop. You might be pleased about completing your 4 world quests. You're slightly disappointed that you didn't get a legendary from it. You're really happy about beating a mythic boss or a mythic plus dungeon, and yet that is slightly tinged, that happiness, with a disappointment of not getting a legendary drop. And I would argue that yes, disappointment is not a feeling that you should have when you've just downed a mythic boss, and I get that, and that is a valid concern. The concerns about the RNG nature of just I don't have one and my friends do, or I run X amount of mythic plus dungeons a week, I'm pretty hardcore, we boosted some guy through the other day, he got a legendary drop first thing, it's best in slot, that has never happened to me, I'm still waiting for any decent legendary at all. Yeah, I get it. That's slightly annoying, I guess, if you are aiming for a legendary in the first place. Was I annoyed that I didn't have a legendary for ages and ages and ages? Slightly, but it wasn't breaking the game for me. I knew I was doing all the right things to get a legendary. I knew that it was a random drop. I knew that probability said I would be getting a legendary pretty soon. I know that probability says I'll be getting another legendary pretty soon, I'd have thought, with all my bad luck protection and whatnot. So I know that anecdotally, it is annoying, the random nature of the drops. And there is something we're going to come on to later, the idea that Blizzard maybe hasn't communicated the best ways to get a legendary. I'm going to talk about that later on. But far more concerning, I think, for the community is the argument that RNG nature and the fact that you can't specifically farm a specific type of legendary means that At a high level of play, at a competitive level of play, it breaks the game. The idea that there are some legendaries which are best in slot, and there are some legendaries which are essentially, like Sephiroth's Secret, complete fucking trash from a raiding point of view, means that at the elite levels of play, the very top levels of play, it breaks the game. Because if you are an arms warrior who doesn't have your best in slot legendary item, or your two which work in perfect synergy together, or if you're a fire mage that doesn't have their BIS legendary item, that you are essentially a useless arms warrior or a useless fire mage at the top levels of play, and there is no place for you at competitive levels of play. That is the argument. That is the argument I see most of all. And the idea that those top players, or anyone that's trying to become a top player, is at the mercy of that RNG and is completely in the lap of the gods because they can't specifically farm a certain item that they really want to completely min-max their character. Is this an argument that makes sense? Yes, of course it is. What these people are saying is, to a large extent, true. Is it an argument which is important and game-breaking? I would argue no. And again, hear me out, guys, please. Because this is why. My first argument would be that competitive top-level players, we're talking the guys that go out there and kill these mythic bosses on the week or even hours of their release. I would argue that the entire point of being a competitive mythic PvE player is that you are always sub-optimally geared. You never have cutting-edge gear when you beat these bosses. That's the whole point. You haven't had time to farm all of the best gear, which is what those bosses drop. So you are used to going in there with gear which is suboptimal. That's why it takes the rest of us weeks, sometimes months to catch up. It's because we can't do that. We have to farm the gear. We have to, in many cases, and I've done this myself, out-gear the content before we can actually have any hope of really tackling it. You don't expect the raiders in those guilds, when those bosses go down, to have best in slot gear. If you look at the method roster that sits down Mythic Hellier, that is quite often the case. But fuck it, let's say that yes, the random drop nature of legendaries and the fact that you can't target any specific legendary does break the game at a competitive level. How many players does that actually affect? What is a competitive World of Warcraft player? Well, presumably a competitive World of Warcraft player belongs to a competitive guild. What the fuck is a competitive guild? Well, a competitive guild is one that competes for world firsts, which I guess is the highest honour that any guild can achieve. That's what they compete for. How many genuinely competitive guilds are there? I think realistically there's probably about 5 in each realm. But let's be really kind. Let's say that there are 10 EU guilds which are genuinely competitive and can genuinely achieve that world first. Let's say there are 10 on the US realms. Let's be really fucking kind, and even though it's part of the US realms really, say that there are 10 on the Oceanic servers as well, and let's say, because I know nothing about it, that there are 10 on the Korean servers too, okay? That's 40 guilds in the world. Let's assume that each guild has a roster of 30 unique players. That's 20 for the first team and 10 backup. That is 1,200 players out of a player base, and I'm going to be conservative with this estimate, of 5 million. Okay? That is 0.024% of the entire player base. 0.024%. That's what we're talking here about, the amount of players that are genuinely affected if we're talking about breaking the game at top competitive level. And I'm not saying that's okay, I'm just saying that it's disproportionate to the amount of kind of criticism that the system's been getting. It can't be that 0.024% of players that are making as much noise as we've heard, which would suggest that actually the people complaining about this are people at least a rung lower than that. So does the random drop nature and the fact that you can't target specific legendaries, and some are best in slot and some you feel like you really, really need, does that break the game for those people? Well, there's the argument that in good guilds, you're not going to get accepted into the guild if you don't have the best possible gear for your class. So if you're a fire mage and you don't have those wraps, or if you are a arms warrior and you don't have your BIS legendaries, then you won't be accepted into the top guilds or into really good guilds, one rung down from top guilds perhaps. Is that true? Do you know what? It might be. It could well be true, in which case it is a genuine concern, and I understand that. It's fucking annoying when people can't look past those things, because actually there is no raid leader, no guild master in World of Warcraft who is in charge of a good guild which is saying that a fire mage can't be in their guild because they don't have the best in slot legendary item. The most obvious reason being because they could get that legendary item tomorrow. And it wouldn't even matter. But no raid leader worth their salt is going to look at a fire mage and go, oh, this player is not good enough to be in this guild because they don't have their best in slot legendary item. This is not a good player. That raid leader is a shit raid leader, and they will not be the raid leader of a good guild. That's just simple. And I know you're thinking, but Taliesin, they're within their rights to think that, because in the case of arms and fire, and I know I keep using these examples, but they're obvious ones, it will increase your DPS by 10 to 20%, which is a ridiculous increase. You need those BIS legendaries to even sort of be on a level with other people playing your class. And again, yes, that might well be true. But again, in good guilds, which are mostly about progression and about challenging yourselves and about challenging your team, if you're not going for world first, there's no rush to beat those bosses. It's all about the players that you have on board. How committed are those players? How good are those players at thinking of and executing tactics and systems? That's what makes a good player in a good guild, not your best in slot legendary. And yeah, those extra 10, 20% DPS are going to be super, super important and super helpful, but they are not the most important thing that a good raid leader is going to look for when they are choosing their fire mage or their arms warrior. That should be the case. It isn't always. And if it's not the case, is that not more a problem with the player base than with the legendaries themselves? I don't know. That's my gut feeling. It could well be that you have anecdotal examples to prove me wrong completely, in which case, awesome. Put those down in the comments. I'd love to hear about them. This is discussion after all. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong. But the next question I'd ask is those concerns, that are genuine concerns that people have about the fact that you can't target specific legendaries, are those concerns fixable whilst keeping the same ethos of the things that I think are a success about legendaries? Lots of ideas floating around that maybe you could exchange a number of unwanted legendaries for a legendary that you did want, or you could, do the equivalent of disenchanting them, break them down to create ingredients to create your best in slot legendary. Maybe there's a box that you could tick which would actually target certain legendaries, so you have a higher percentage chance of getting those ones. These are all ideas floating around the community at the moment. Do they work? Would they work? Belluar had a system where you actually take the procs away from the legendary and have them added to your artifact power, which is just making the whole thing about 1,000 times more complicated. I don't think those are viable options to add to the legendary system without losing a lot of what is good about legendary items. The idea that you can target a legendary item, even if that means collecting 4 that you don't want and exchanging them for 1 that you do, that takes that excitement and that thrill and that identification that you feel with your legendaries away if you're always got your eye on what legendary you're going to exchange that for. I think it will take away a lot of what I just discussed I liked about legendaries. I can see why Blizzard isn't implementing it. I would be surprised if a system like that wasn't implemented towards the end of the expansion. Possibly when all progressive raiding has been done. I think it's a no-brainer, really. You're going to add a system where you can do that and you can swap legendaries out or, destroy them or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I'm glad. I'm glad it won't happen. And again, I say that as a man with the worst legendary possible. If I had the choice of exchanging my legendary, Would I? Yes, of course I would. It'd be brilliant for me to change my legendary to a much better one. Is it really affecting me as a player at the level I play? No, not really. Yeah, obviously having my best in slot legendary would make my life a whole lot easier. It would probably improve my gameplay, but you could say that about any of my best in slot items. And again, you'll say, but Taliesin, your other best in slot items, the stuff that drops from raids and Mythic Plus dungeons, you can go out and you can farm that and you can look for it specifically. And I say, yes, I can. So why is it wrong to have one item or two items that you can't farm in the same way and that have their own way of being delivered, even if that is a completely random way? We've got 3 different types of amazing item that we can aim for in this game at the moment. We've got our artifact item, which is an amazing weapon that we upgrade and that we can really sort of work on the whole time, which is given to us for free at the beginning of the expansion. We have our legendary items, which are random drops. You can have, at the moment, you can only equip 2 of those in the first place, even though Blizzard are talking about A, increasing the amount that you can wear, and B, the idea that you'll have so many eventually that you can swap them out for different fights. And I think that's quite interesting. And we have those items that you can farm and that you can aim for and you can sort of have on your list of things that you can actually achieve and work towards in game. That's a really important part of an MMO. I know that's kind of what MMOs are based around. But those things still exist in more plentiful numbers than we've ever had before. Even if there's 1 or 2 less slots for them on your character, it is easier now to aim for and to farm really good gear for your raids and for your PvE content than in any other expansion ever. Mythic Plus Dungeons means that you can be geared for a raid before that raid comes out, which is something that progressive raiders have never ever been able to do before. Mythic Plus Dungeons meant that Exorcists were able to go in and kill Mythic Emerald Nightmare wearing gear that the rest of us would have had to have farmed from Mythic Emerald Nightmare because they got it from Mythic Plus. We've got a situation at the moment where progressive raiders are going in almost from a progressive point of view, over-geared for the content, which is one of the reasons Emerald Nightmare went down so easily. One of the reasons that Mythic Hellier had to be so highly tuned to actually give a challenge to these Mythic guilds. Mythic Plus gives us options that we've never had before in gearing for PvE content, and I think that offsets the randomness of those legendary drops and how suboptimal those legendary drops may turn out to be for your character. The fact that we've got so many other ways of getting gear, which is pretty much almost as good with Mythic Plus to prepare us for raiding now, I think does counterbalance that to a really large degree. Fuck, I'm aware this is like the least funny video that we've ever made, and I'm really, really sorry about that. I wish I had some jokes that I could just pop in here. Fucking hell. Okay, do you know what? I promise the next video we do is going to be like the funniest video you've ever seen in your entire life. It's going to blow your tiny little minds. It's going to be absolutely incredible. The next issue that I want to look at is the idea, and something that people have been getting very upset with recently, the idea that Blizzard have somehow misled or lied about the soft cap and the drop rate and the sources of dropping of legendary items. And this is not an uncommon accusation to hear levelled at Blizzard. It's not an unfair accusation a lot of the time. Is it appropriate in this sense? Well, what are Blizzard accused of doing? A lot of talk, and this is something that Preach's video was all about last week. The idea that Blizzard came out and they said there was not a soft cap on the amount of legendaries that you could get. No soft cap on the amount of legendaries that you could get. And there was bad luck protection, as they put it, applied to how you go about getting your legendaries, which Preach made a video about and picked up on a certain thing that was said in the blue post relevant to it, where the blue post also said, basically, the more you play the game, the more chance you get of getting legendaries. And he took that as meaning, Preach, that there was no actual programmed bad luck protection, and that actually they were literally just saying the more you play the game, obviously the more chances you're going to have of getting a legendary, which I thought was an unfair accusation for him to make and an unfair thing for him to say, because that's not what I took from that blue post at all. For me, when I read that there's bad luck protection, I think I know exactly what that means. I think that means, off the top of my head, without thinking about it too much, that there is a base chance, a really, really small chance, that any of the activities that I do that have a chance of dropping a legendary are going to drop that legendary. That's the base chance. But then every time that I don't get a legendary from that drop, or maybe every 10 times or 20 times or whatever, but there's some system in place where eventually it gets to a point where my chances actually improve, as in the base level of chance that that thing is going to drop improves. It's not just a case of playing the odds. It's not just a case of, oh, the more you do something, the more chance there is that it's going to drop. It's literally more chance that it's going to drop, because they are decreasing the odds at which it will happen. It's like if I toss a coin 100 times, every single time I toss that coin, there's a 50% chance that it's going to land on heads. I could toss a coin 100 times and I could get heads every single time. That would be pretty fucking stinking luck, but I could. Well, it could be really good luck if I was aiming for heads, but you know what I mean. Who isn't aiming for heads? God, who doesn't say heads when you toss a coin? Yeah, that's an idiot. That's a terrible example. I could get tails 100 times in a row if I tossed a coin 100 times in a row. It's really possible. In fact, if I tossed a coin 10,000 times in a row, there's actually quite a high percentage chance there's going to be a run of 20 heads in a row at some point. That's just how sort of maths works. That is an example of no bad luck protection. I'm going to toss the coin, and the more times I toss the coin, the more chance there is that eventually at some point I'm going to get a tail. I might get it the first time. It might take me the 10th toss of that coin to get a tail. But each time that I toss that coin, the chances are the same. That is no bad luck protection. That's what Preach was saying he thought was happening in the game. That's not what I took at all from that. Bad luck protection is if you toss a coin, the first time you toss the coin, you've got a 50% chance of getting a tail if you want a tail. Let's say you don't get the tail. Let's say it lands on heads the first time. The second time you toss the coin, you now have a 51% chance of getting a tail. It's been altered. That's bad luck protection. That's not how just tossing a coin over and over works. That's bad luck protection. I'm sure you all fucking know this, but I think it deserves to be said because so many people are getting it wrong. Then if I don't get a tail the second time and I toss the coin a third time, bad luck protection kicks in, and now that's a 52% chance. That's something that has to be programmed in. That's not how probability just works. That's something you have to actually add onto it, and that's what Blizzard was saying was happening. That's what I take bad luck protection to mean. And lo and behold, it turns out that that is what was happening, and that those criticisms that are being leveled at Blizzard were a little bit unjustified. In my opinion, are people right to criticize that Blizzard didn't communicate that properly? In my opinion, no, because I understood what they meant. They didn't miscommunicate to me. They said there was bad luck protection, and I understood what that meant. Now, I'm not saying that Blizzard don't have a track record of being quite poor with their communication, as exemplified by the flying fiasco in Warlords of Draenor, a perfect example of something that a lot of people wouldn't have given a shit about if they hadn't communicated it so badly. And it was that constant toing and froing and misinformation which caused that problem in the first place. I get that is something that Blizzard does. They can't help it. It's beyond them not to sometimes. But I don't think that's what happened in this situation, genuinely, despite what Preach says. Did they lie about there being a soft cap on legendaries? Again, people are saying that they did, but I don't think they did. They said there was no soft cap on the amount of legendaries you could get. There isn't. You can get 5, 6, 7, 8 legendaries. You can do it. But after 4 legendaries, you just couldn't get bad luck protection. Is that a soft cap? Not really. Because the base chance that you were going to get a legendary was the same as the first day you started playing for your 5th legendary as for your first legendary, but it just didn't kick in with bad luck protection after that if you didn't get a legendary. So your chance was still exactly the same. Your chances didn't decrease by having 4 legendaries. They just didn't get better as time went on. Like they did before. So there's a cap on the damage protection, but not a soft cap on the amount of legendaries that you could get. That's simply not what was happening. And that's what Blizzard did say. They said there's no cap on the amount of legendaries. There's no soft cap. Your chances are going to be the same. And they were right. As it happens, this is an irrelevant conversation anyway, because the blue post that came out a couple of days ago says that actually they're going to be taking away that cap of damage protection after 4 legendaries. So again, We're all going to be swimming in legendaries by the end of the expansion, except me, obviously. I'm going to be stuck with Cephus' fucking secret forever and ever and ever, obviously. But people are still really angry about legendaries for all of those reasons and more that we've highlighted in this video. And I am now going to make the argument that I genuinely believe that a lot of this anger is because people misunderstand what legendaries are for. And I've touched on all of these things during this video, but if Blizzard come out and say, we are creating these things that are these great items, you can't farm them. You can't aim for a specific one. You're going to get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and that's going to be really cool. And you can swap them out, but you can't farm them. To then turn around and go, I hate legendaries because I can't farm them, and because I can't aim for a specific one, is missing the point. So why are you missing the point with them? Why aren't you just enjoying them for what they are supposed to be, which are things that are random drops? Now, when I heard about the legendary system, despite the fact I didn't like the idea, I made a decision not to read up on the legendaries. As information about them came out, I chose not to learn about the specific legendaries available for my classes. And the reason I did that was because of those reasons. I knew how the system was going to work. I knew I wasn't going to be able to aim for specific legendary. I knew there was nothing that I could do to target a specific legendary. If a legendary dropped for me, that would happen within the course of the game, and that would be awesome. That would be like a bonus for me. And so that's what I did. And what's the point of learning what all of those legendaries are if I can't aim for a specific one? All that's going to do is frustrate me and annoy me and make me get annoyed with the legendary that I eventually get. And that's exactly what has happened for this huge swathe of the player base. They've all been wanting to get a specific legendary or specific few legendaries, and when they don't, when they get Cephus' secret, that's ruined the entire game for them, and it's broken because they haven't achieved what they wanted to do in the game. And that's a really important part of an MMO. You have to be able to have goals which are achievable. The whole point of an MMO basically is that all its goals are achievable. It's not like real life where there's huge elements of chance. You know, I can't just be born and decide that I want to be president of the United States. I can't. It's as simple as that. For a start, I wasn't born in the United States, so I'm off the list straight away. There are just loads of things in my life that I can't do and I can't achieve, and that's not my fault. I can't help it. It's okay, and we all live with that every single day. I'm never going to be Duke of Milan because that's a hereditary title, and I'm not part of that family. That's okay. I was just born not being able to achieve that thing. I'm not, actually that isn't okay, but you know, that's just something that I live with. That's fine. MMOs aren't like that. And the reason MMOs are popular is because every single thing that you can achieve in an MMO is achievable. If I want a certain item, I can farm that shit and I will eventually get it. I can beat the boss, I can join a good guild, and I will get those fucking warglaves eventually. It is achievable. I can go around, I can gather resources around the world, I can max out my tailoring skill. There is no one that can stop me doing that. I can achieve every single achievement in the game of World of Warcraft, and that is what MMOs thrive on, that constant goal setting, and the fact that all of those goals are achievable if you just work hard enough at them. They offer something that real life doesn't offer, and then suddenly these legendary items come in, and it's a bit too much like real life. There's a bit too much chance going on here. I might get absolutely fucked. I might be born in a third world country and not have many chances in life. I might get Cephus' fucking secret. I'm not saying that getting Cephus' secret is as bad as being born in a third world country where there's no running water and food and I'll probably die at a very young age, but it almost is as bad, okay? Honestly, have you seen Cephus' fucking secret? It's a terrible, terrible legendary. Anyway, that's what people don't like about it. The fact they don't have that control over it. And the thing is, just like real life, you'll enjoy it a lot more and you'll be a lot happier with things if you do accept it to a certain degree and enjoy the good things about legendaries. And those things are great. That conversation that it creates among the community and that thing that we all have in common. I really love what legendaries have done to the game, apart from all the hate that comes their way and the division it's caused in the community. The good things that they do are brilliant. And all of us, whether we hate legendaries or love them, have participated in that conversation and that interaction that we wouldn't have had legendaries not been a thing. So you have got a lot of benefit from the legendary system, even if you don't know it. And that's what it's there for. It's created more of a sense of community. It really has. And it's been really cool to be a part of. And you know what? Sometimes when I'm out questing or in dungeons, I do wear Sephuz's secret because there is actually a chance that I'll get the proc from it there because I can use my fear and stuff. And despite everything I say about it, it has changed the way that I play in PvE. I use fear a lot more. And you know what? Something I'd forgotten being a discipline priest is that fear, it works as a dispel. Now, that sounds like a really stupid thing and that I'm an idiot for never remembering that, but you use fear so little as a discipline priest because you're pretty much indestructible. You just stand there blasting stuff. You forget that it's a dispel. And of course, you can never use it against bosses or anything because they're not affected by it. But in certain situations in raid, fear is actually quite useful, I'd imagine, in old raids that I don't need to do anymore. But the point is, it changed the way I play, and it might even have made me a better player in the long run as well. So how cool is that? And that, internet, is what I think about Legendaries. Now you are allowed to go down and write in the comments how wrong I am. And you know what? I'd love to hear your opinions on it, because if you can actually sort of specifically tackle the things that I've said, I'd love to hear why I'm wrong. If you're a mythic raider and you completely disagree with what I'm saying, or if you've had a really bad experience of not being allowed in the top gear because you haven't got your top guild, because you haven't got your BIS legendary, please, again, let me know. That'd be really fantastic. I'd also like to hear any brilliant stories of family breakups that have been caused by Legendaries as well, because I know that we've had quite a few of that here. Evitel does not have a legendary item, despite the fact she plays a shit ton of this game as well. She has no legendary at all. It's absolutely obscene and disgusting, and Blizzard, seriously, sort it out, mate. Yeah, and there's often more snideness in this house than there needs to be because of her lack of legendary. So I'd love to hear your stories about family breakups. That'd be great. Put your family breakup in our comments. That'd be really, really cool. Guys, thank you for joining us on this video. I know it's been a bit rambling. I'm not going to make a habit of this sort of thing. The Taliesin Talks series will be far and few and far between. See, look, I can't even fucking finish it right. I'm just an idiot. I'm terrible at YouTube. Everyone knows it. Hopefully no one will watch this video and it'll be all okay. But if you did watch the video, thank you a lot. Thanks for making it this far. You really are awesome. You can join us on Twitter and on Twitch as well. All the links are in the description of this video. Thank you especially to the members of our Patreon who actually give their real life actual money to keep this channel going, and the videos we make, even shit ones like this, would be so much rarer without your support. They get their own videos as well, so you can check it out if you fancy our Patreon. But thank you guys so much. We'll have some proper Taliesin and Evitel videos coming out soon. If you liked the video, you can like it if you like, and if you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Evitel, and this is Evitel Talks. Thank you ever so much, guys, and until next time, cheerio.